Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. We're so glad to have you here with us this afternoon for solar siting issues in Westchester County, a lunch and learn. This program, I'm Ann Jaffe Holmes with the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County. And this program was developed in partnership with FCWC, the Sawmill River Audubon, the Environmental Leaders Learning Alliance, and also Teatown Lake Reservation. And we are delighted and grateful to our speakers for being here with us today to share their experience and their expertise in solar development in Westchester County. So thank you all for recognizing that this is a timely issue worth your lunch hour today. For those of you who listened to the governor's State of the State Part 3, you know that our state at the highest levels is greatly committed to the development of clean energy throughout our state. And in fact, we here in Westchester are very fortunate because thanks to the efforts primarily of Sustainable Westchester, which 8 or 10 years ago, I think, launched the solarized programs that many of your municipalities have participated in, we got a real good start on solar consciousness as well as solar installation in our county. And now Sustainable Westchester is developing and promoting community solar program installations in Westchester County. And today, you will have the opportunity to enroll in community solar if you have not done so already, and to thereby help create more community solar in our county, as well as benefit from the cost savings. Nina Orville will be putting information about enrollment in community solar in our county in the chat today, but we will also be doing a follow-up program on this really important topic. So thank you for keeping your eye on that. And now this is an opening conversation on solar installation. So we do intend to be following this with more specific, deeper dive lunch and learns. And for that, we want to get your feedback on what topics and specific questions and issues you want us to do follow-up programs on. So watch for the email we'll be sending to you probably tomorrow with a little bit of a questionnaire on it about your needs for further information on solar for your communities. With that, I think it's my turn to pass the microphone to Tom Ruth, President of the Sawmill River Audubon. Tom?
Thanks very much, Ann. Actually, I'm the Vice President of Sawmill River Audubon and chair of the Advocacy group. As we all know, we need many and large solar farms as we move into the future. And our Advocacy group was talking about potential environmental impacts of those kinds of projects. We realized how many and how complex the issues could be. So we decided to reach out to some knowledgeable people to talk about this. And Carol Griffiths of FCWC said, well, we ought to make a webinar out of this. Others might be interested as well. And I think she was right, because we had about 150 people sign up for this one. And as we got going further, we found out that it's even more complex. We needed more than one webinar. So we'll be working on that. It's been a privilege to work with our partner organizations, and I'm really excited to hear from our panel. So to introduce our panel and get the discussions started, here's Nadia Hall of Teatown and Ella.
So without further ado, I'll just make a few notes here before we get started. And so please, we're going to try to keep everybody muted, but do what you can, because we have a lot of people in here, to make sure that you're muted yourself throughout, so we can avoid some of the background noises. This is being recorded and will be sent to you after, along with some of the polling questions. So please take a moment to look through that afterwards. And throughout anybody's presentation, please just write your questions in the chat for now. And at the end, we'll get to as many as we're able. And with that, let's move on to the first speaker. So thank you, Peter McCartt, for joining us today. I doubt he really needs any introduction, but Peter McCartt is the Director of Energy Conservation and Sustainability for Westchester County, and he serves on the Eastchester Environmental Committee. I think there may be two of him because he always seems to be in more than one place at once, but I want to thank you for your continued dedication to the environment and your leadership across Westchester County, and of course, for being with us here today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadia. That's very nice of you. I'd also like to say that I'm on the board of directors for Sustainable Westchester, and I was very happy and proud to be one of the founding members and help to create that back in the day. And I think community choice aggregation has really put Westchester on the map. We were the first county in all of New York State to have a community choice aggregation program through the Westchester Power Program. So I don't think anyone here, where we got pretty much a little bit of the choir, will disagree that we need to move away from dirty fossil fuels and as quickly as possible. Renewable energy is the key component to saving our planet's future. We need to electrify everything, especially our transportation and our buildings' energy needs. Hydroelectric energy has been great, but expansion is nearly maxed out. Wind power is excellent, and it's going up on an enormous scale. If you listen to Cuomo's State of the State Part 3, the green economy, yesterday, you got a little bit of, you got more information than I'm going to give you, but we have these massive projects that are being constructed 20 miles off the coast of the Hamptons, and then there's another installation 60 miles off the tip of Montauk. These are massive. They will be the largest in North America, and the good thing is that they will be added in an ongoing process going into the next century. So the plan is to just keep expanding that. But it's going to take a long time. It's going to be many years before these are fully operational. So that brings us to solar, right? We're going to hear specifically about siting issues, but I was asked to also tell you what the county is doing and how we are going about it. We have two phases. The first one is our low-hanging fruit, buildings and sites that were just ripe for installations. We are in full process with these. A solar developer was rigorously selected, and we are completing the design phase of this 8 megawatt portfolio, which includes our two gigantic bus terminals, the one in Yonkers and other in Valhalla, and then on our other buildings like the Parks Administration, Courthouse, and our Archives building. But also included in this is the parking lot at Croton Point Park. I really believe in the near future, carports are what's going to really lead us on our solar expansion. So imagine all these huge parking lots across New York and the country, really, having solar panels on them. The solar panels also protect your vehicle, and they give you access to an EV charger. When I think of these, I always picture those expansive lots out at Jones Beach, which are only used by beachgoers, really, on a few peak days in the summer. And then there are the commuter lots all over the county. So let's get more carports up. Phase 2 are the properties that didn't quite make our quick and easy installations, such as the airport, buildings that need roofs, and Playland parking lot. Because with Playland, there's a new Con Ed electrical trunk switch that's being completed. But the truly beautiful thing about this phase 2 is that all our municipalities can, they proposed installation sites, and they're going to be aggregated into the RFP with the county's much larger ones to get better rates and to ease the process of procurement, design, and construction. Munis and the county and many schools, we buy our electricity from New York Power Authority at a deeply discounted rate than what you would get from Con Ed. So solar hasn't made a ton of economic sense up until now. And now with community solar, which we're going to hear more about, and this Westchester Community Solar Partnership that we've created, that's our phase 2, all of our towns and villages can jump into the solar game. But But we're here to talk about siting, right? Rooftops, parking lots, and yes, ground mounts are all viable, but they need to be done in a way that does not adversely affect our soil health, water, and our general environment. There are rules and processes such as SECRA and other governmental regulations that need to be followed. I'm very fortunate that we have environmental planner Dave Kavinga, who works for the county. Many of you probably know him. If you don't, he's just a wealth of knowledge and information about the environment and planning for the future. And he keeps us on our wooded path. But let's please not shy away from NIMBY issues. We are in this together. We sometimes need to make tough choices to the betterment of our world for our children and our children's children. And I just want to thank, the partners that brought this together. And I'm looking forward to, hearing from Leo and the others, the mayor, and the rest of us. And I always thank FCWC. We're proud to be partners with them and all the rest of you. I do want to give a plug that on April 1st as a kickoff for Earth Day, Earth Week, Earth Month. We like to call it Earth Year. How about that, guys? We are going to have I like to use the word confabulation, but we're calling it a conference of all the municipal CACs, all the sustainability committees, the environmental committees, all that, just for Westchester County. We're planning one for New York State through Simon Skolnick, and he lives here in Westchester. So we're planning to have another one in the fall, but that will be for all New York State. So April 1st, save the date. It's going to be at 9 to 12, and we're going to bring all these CACs together and talk about best practices and obstacles that they have, successes they had, and then we'll break out into breakout sessions. We can focus on various things. But I just want to again thank Ann and Monica and FCWC and everybody involved. Thank you very much. Nadia as well, always. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Peter. And we'll make sure to get that April 1st conference information out to everybody across all of our lists as well to make sure everyone has a chance to sign up there.
Thank you, Nadia.
All right. So next, without hesitation, we have Audrey Friedrichsen. Audrey is the land use and environmental advocacy attorney at Scenic Hudson. Scenic Hudson is a nonprofit organization based in Poughkeepsie, New York, dedicated to preserving the scenic, ecological, recreational, historic, and agricultural treasures of the Hudson River Valley. Scenic Hudson strongly supports the goals of the 2019 Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which increased the state's 2030 renewable energy supply target from 50 to 70% in the interest of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and mitigating the worst impacts of climate change. Audrey's work focuses on the renewable energy siting issues in the interest of making the Hudson Valley a model for the transition to clean energy. So thank you for being with us today, Audrey.
Thank you, and hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm going to share my screen and start a PowerPoint. If I can get this to go away. From the beginning, here we go. At the start. So thank you everybody for inviting us today to be able to speak. What I will be talking about is some solar siting tools that Scenic Hudson has been putting together over the last few years. And what we are calling How to Solar Now. So thank you very much, Peter, for sort of setting the stage here in terms of what we're all really interested in doing, which is getting renewable energy built, getting it built quickly and cost effectively, but also in a way that doesn't impact our environment. And as Peter said, our soils, our water, our view sheds, and everything else. So just as a very quick reminder, for those of you not familiar, Scenic Hudson, we do a few things. We preserve land. We have the Scenic Hudson Land Trust. We also do a lot of advocacy work. Most of the time, we are opposing bad projects. For instance, the way we began was opposing a renewable energy project where they planned to chop off the top of Storm King Mountain with a pumped hydro storage facility. And luckily, it is still there today. And we also have quite a few parks all up and down the Hudson Valley. And as was mentioned in the introduction, we really do support the state's clean energy goals. the goals of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, as well as the more recent siting law that was included in the budget this year. And, you know, we have been looking at this strategically. We are interested in strengthening resiliency in the face of climate change in the Hudson Valley. Our vision for the Valley is to create a regional model that is in response to climate change. And we recognize that we need to make a rapid transition to renewable energy, but again, in a way that protects our important resources. So I'm going to go over what is now a tool that's available online on our website. We're calling it How to Solar Now. It's really to help inform the siting process, especially with regard to solar energy, and to support decision-making by stakeholders. So that is everyone from residents to landowners to solar developers to municipal leaders, people in CACs, as Peter mentioned, planning boards, legislatures, and again, all in the interest of making the Hudson Valley a model. So we're really trying to help inform this process. And our How to Solar Now toolbox includes a guide to solar siting, which we developed a couple of years ago, a more recently released solar mapping tool, which is a GIS, Global Information System mapping tool, and coming soon, hopefully in the next 7 days, a guide to developing actual solar zoning laws for your municipality. And there's a link to it. So just very quickly, the 3 parts of our How to Solar Now toolbox again. The first is our Clean Energy Green Communities Solar Siting Guide. And really what the interest behind this tool is, it's a written narrative, and it sets forth principles for siting. And Peter really set out our very first principle, which is to go after the low-hanging fruit, right? Find the places that make sense to co-locate or put solar on previously disturbed areas such as carports, parking lots, building roofs, and really maximize the use of those resources. But then when it comes to more open space and perhaps something like ground mount solar, which comes with, you know, siting issues and potentially opposition, we're really trying to find the solutions to make sure that those projects get developed in a way that makes sense. And the whole interest behind this sort of smart from the start siting principles is to really achieve our renewable energy goals, right? The idea is if you design it well from the beginning, it should smooth the process and really promote successful renewable energy development. So that document, Clean Energy Green Communities, which we launched a couple of years ago, is the first tool that's available in our How to Solar Now toolbox. And secondly, what we just released after a year-long effort with support from the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation is our solar mapping tool for your Hudson Valley community. And just as a real quick aside, this is a drone shot of a project that was built up in Greenport, New York. It's a community solar around a 6 megawatt facility that they really managed to find a place and fit it into the landscape off on the side of the road. There was a historic resource next door, and we worked with them, we worked with the developer, and in the end, everyone was happy with how this project turned out and is sited and its minimal impacts. So our solar mapping tool, it's very hard to describe narratively. It's an online mapping source. It's a GIS-based map. It includes some guidance on one side of your screen with regard to solar energy, and on the other side of the screen, you can map various data layers that are relevant to solar. And this tool is really meant to do 3 things. First of all, support comprehensive planning and zoning for solar by helping people find places where it makes sense to put solar, and then of course putting that in your comprehensive plan or zoning. You can also look at a particular site and see what sorts of natural resources or other things are there on that site. And then also we are hoping it will be used in the context of climate action planning. And Peter mentioned like an 8 megawatt goal. If a community has such a goal, right, you can look using this mapping system to find places where it might go and then set your targets that way. So just real quickly, this tool has 4 parts. The first part is some educational materials on what exactly is solar energy, right? It comes in all different shapes and sizes. It can be on a roof, it can be on the ground. So just some information about what it is and its potential impacts. And then secondly, it provides a planning approach, which is to first look at what is on the ground already and build out in your area of interest, right? And what's already there, buildings or farms, right? And then find opportunities. So those are those opportunity areas, parking lots, rooftops. Third, look at the natural resources, wetlands, agricultural soils, forested areas, and try and identify locations that are best for solar that will minimize impacts to those resources. And again, what the tool does is map them all. And then lastly, evaluate feasibility. And the issue there, especially with ground mount solar and community solar or larger projects, is where can you connect it to the grid and where is the best place for it to go in terms of slope and aspect of the ground. So then in part 3, you can learn about all of the different layers that are in the tool. We include a worksheet. You can either fill it in yourself or print it out and write on it. And where in terms of looking at a map and all of this information and recording this for your planning and zoning or other purpose. And one thing we're very excited about in terms of solar feasibility is we were successfully able to work with the joint utilities. So that's Central Hudson and NYSEG and ONR and Con Ed. And they allowed us to be able to stream into our mapping tool. So this is an example of what the tool looks like. There's guidance on the left-hand side and mapped information on the right-hand side. And those hosting capacity maps basically serve as a proxy for planning because they tell you where capacity or the ability to be able to interconnect a certain amount of new energy generation into the lines. And then lastly is a fully interactive map where you can put all this together, your knowledge of what solar is, where the places are that you might be able to put it to start out with, where the natural resources are, and transmission and interconnection, and start to really record and make sense of where it might be best located, and doing that in a way that aligns with our principles, and to really find ways to integrate it into the landscape in a way that makes sense. So that's our solar mapping tool. And then the third thing coming soon is a document similar to our siting guide, which is, it's going to be called Solar Ready Climate Resilient, and it really sets out a bunch of best practices and recommendations for solar zoning. And I just really quickly listed, basically right out of the table of contents, recommendations of how to integrate and plan for this, and then put it into your local code of how to best get solar integrated into the community. Right from setting a policy that you want to be pro-solar, identifying and eliminating barriers that might be in your existing code, making sure you define things clearly, and then addressing issues such as visual impacts, agricultural impacts, and really finding ways to write your code so that solar can be allowed broadly and provide flexibility to be able to get it built. So those are the 3 things in our How to Solar Now toolbox. I'm sure that this presentation will be available afterwards and you can check out all of the links. But I will also make a very quick plug. A week from today in the evening from 5:30 to 7 o'clock p.m., because this was only a very brief taste of what our solar mapping tool is. We are going to be holding a virtual conference, and there is a link there for registration. It's also on our website. If you Google Scenic Hudson and go to our events, you can find an Eventbrite registration link. And we will be doing a much more in-depth presentation of the tool, and then having some breakout sessions for its actual application. So that's about it for me. I'm going to stop sharing if I can.
Thank you, Audrey.
Pass it on.
Thanks so much. That's obviously an incredibly important resource for everybody to have at their disposal. I'll make sure to send out that date to the LL listserv so everyone has a chance to sign up for that as well. I know that I am already registered, so I'm looking forward to it. All right, so next we have Mayor Gina Picinich with us since December 2017. Gina has had the honor, in her own words, of serving as mayor of the town and village of Mount Kisco. Using her experience as a senior executive in the private sector, Gina has rallied all village resources to make local government accountable and responsive to the needs of residents, property, and business owners in the community. Gina is known for fairness and seeking middle ground to find practical, fiscally responsible solutions to challenges. So thank you for sort of bridging the gap and being with us here today to talk about your experiences.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of what we've done in Mount Kisco. My portion of this program is actually about practical application. And so I'm really honored to be here because I'm learning, I think, as is everyone else as we move along. So for those of you who are not familiar with Mount Kisco, I'll share just a little bit about us. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, if you just give me a second. So Mount Kisco, we are in northern Westchester. We are a community of just under 11,000 people. There we go. And we're only 3.25 square miles. We've actually got, we're pretty densely populated, especially when compared with other communities in northern Westchester. And Mount Kisco, I'm proud to share, is a New York State Bronze Certified Climate Smart Community. So Mount Kisco made a choice to actively encourage solar and solar development. Early on, we adopted the New York State Unified Solar Permit, allowing for roof-mounted solar. We then, of course, adopted the PACE legislation that allowed folks to include financing for solar through their property taxes. And then in 2018, we actively sought and approved a community solar project on our capped landfill. Fortunately, we were able to do that project. I'll talk just a little bit more about it in a little while, but BQ Energy was the organization that actually did that project for us, and we had the good fortune to work with Sustainable Westchester and Nina Orville in order to get that project fully subscribed in a very short period of time. When we did that project, we said, hey, what we need to do is ensure that other property owners, not village property, have the opportunity to do something similar. And so we took the NYSERDA model law and we adapted it and adopted it specifically for our community so that we can identify where solar would be permitted. So we had to set the ground rules to enable us to do this. We had to identify the different types of solar that we would permit and where we would permit it in our community. Same concerns, just as any land use issues. So we have tier 1 and tier 3 solar. 2 is just left aside for anything that may come up in the future. Tier 1 are roof, building mounted and smaller ground mounted systems that are smaller than 750 square feet. The process to put these projects in place is very simple. It's just a permit through our building department. It is permitted in all zones across our village. Tier 3 are much larger systems, anything greater than 750 square feet. And we made a choice that this would be a more intense process, permitted only by special permit through our planning board. And a special permit includes a public hearing. And we identified specific zones. We sat down with our zoning map and went zone by zone by zone. And so tier 3 ground mounted systems are permitted in, I believe, 16 zones across the village. I'll share with you some of the projects that have happened over time. There's a huge roof mounted project at 333 North Bedford Road, Diamond Properties. The building is 800,000 square feet. I believe half of it has solar panels. They actually provide all the energy to the tenants in that building. Bicycle World, smaller business, did a renovation of their building. They're now, all their power is actually coming from solar mounted on their roof. Sustainable Westchester, we're proud to be the home of Sustainable Westchester here in the village of Mount Kisco. They have some space that we just renovated, and they worked with us, and they sourced some solar for the rooftop of the building that they're currently in that will also feed power to electric vehicle charging stations. Working with Westchester County, we actually submitted for future planning for the big project that they're trying to get all of the communities together. Our water treatment plant has an opportunity, we believe, for solar on top of it there as well. So we're happy and proud to be a part of that much bigger project in the county. Our tier 3 systems in the village, they go from no-brainer to a little challenging to more challenging. So I'll share each of these with you. The cap landfill, again, no-brainer. Land not being used, it's actually up as of the 1st of this year. It's fully functional and running right now. It's about 1.5 acres plus battery storage. So that's all up and running. Community solar project, specifically for residents of Mount Kisco, fully subscribed in a short period of time, thanks to the good work of Nina Orville and the folks at Sustainable Westchester. Oakwood Cemetery, there's a couple of acres in the back that they did not plan on using for interments, private property, nonprofit private property. And so they have approval for a 1.75 megawatt system. It's 4 of their 150 acres. And so that is in the process of being installed right now. And there's an application right now that is on Sarl Street at the border of Bedford in Mount Kisco. And this project is currently before our planning board. The proposal is for 2.5 megawatts at 6.5 of 25 acres. So I'm just gonna give you a quick look. So this is our DPW facility and our cap landfill. That's an up and running solar array. Right now, our community solar project. This is the project out at Oakwood Cemetery that's currently being installed. The far side where the lower level of trees are, that's actually the Metro North Railroad tracks. This sits down low. The rest of the cemetery is elevated quite higher, so you'd ride down to this. You don't see all the shading that's going to go up in front of it and the screening and plantings that will be done in the future, because again, this is currently in process. There were some challenges associated with this, a wildlife corridor that ran through, and so we had to find some way, and the planning board had to find some ways to ensure that we made accommodations for that. It was mostly open lawn and field. There were, however, some trees that had to be removed, I believe, between 50 and 60. This is the proposed project right now on Sarles Street. It's a 25-acre piece of land. It's currently in a conservation development district. That means by right, as a principal use, 35% of this property can be developed for homes, which would mean homes, which would mean roads, which would mean sewers, which would mean school children, which would mean traffic. So it's a fairly intense use. And so the solar, which again could not exceed 35% of the property, would mean far less intensification. The concern, of course, is that this is currently, well, not all of it. There's some open field on it, but there's also trees and green space and wildlife habitat here as well. So this is the project that's currently before our planning board right now. So what have been our greatest challenges? So this perception of green space versus solar. is the biggest problem. So as we sat and we wrote our solar code, we looked at the zoning where it would and would not be permitted. Our focus was really on considering existing principal uses. So again, a conservation development district means that you have to leave the vast majority of that property green. Only a certain percentage could be developed. And so we thought that solar would be a good use for that fraction of the property that could be developed. The other piece that really needs to be focused on, again, is mitigating any environmental impact. So for example, I said that there was a wildlife corridor that there was grave concern about in the cemetery. So they made accommodation where they lifted the fences from the bottom so that small animals can run through and around. The plan is to replant pollinator habitats and also ensure that native plants were put back in place. And again, just one of the overarching guiding principles that needs to continue to happen is that if larger projects are being cited in areas where there is green space, the greater percentage of the space should be left green. So that's my presentation. Those are our parts and pieces. It has not been without challenge, I assure you, and the challenges still continue. But we're learning and we're growing and we're listening as we move along, because we're really, really committed to ensuring that, that we're producing clean and renewable energy in the small footprint of our village.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And it's really interesting to hear your story in particular, because Mount Kisco is so far along in terms of the other municipalities across Westchester with solar siting and needing to get out on the forefront to figure out what's right and where and how to do that. So thank you for sharing. And I'm sure that we'll be back to talk to you soon about more. So last but of course not least, we have Leo Wiegman with us today. Leo is the co-founder and co-owner of Croton Energy Group, a solar and energy storage firm building projects in the residential, commercial, and community solar marketplace. Leo is also president of the board of a new nonprofit, QR100, which stands for Communities United to Reduce Emission 100%, that is dedicated to helping households everywhere achieve net zero emissions by 2040. QR100 is launching an innovative carbon tracker app that can be licensed for free by community groups and can be tailored to any zip code in the US. And you can find out more at qr100.org. Leo is also a former mayor of the village of Croton on Hudson. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, good to be here. Let me start the share. And it was nice to see how much progress Mount Kisco has been able to make. And so that's very great to hear. We're going to talk briefly about, let me get my keyboard here to work. No, I guess I have to. Oh, here we go, next slide. So 50% of homes are not, only 50% of homes are roughly solar optimal, as many of us have shade trees and roof areas facing south, and the roofs may be too old or they may be rented and not owned space. And if over the course of the last 17 years, solar installations, this is the number of installations per year, have climbed quite steadily. And I know some folks are on the call who have been involved in solarized programs such as Nina Orville and Dan Welch and others. And this spike in 2016 was a culmination of a number of very successful community solarized programs. Last year, 2020, it's hard to believe that last year was already 2020, but there was about a 2.5 month hiatus in solar construction work because of the COVID pause and the governor's defining solar as non-essential construction. So the number of installations dipped in 2020, but exactly a year ago, the solar projects that were in the pipeline with NYSERDA for Westchester County represented $65 million worth of work. And just keep that number in mind. We enter 2021 with 471 projects in the pipeline with NYSERDA, and believe it or not, $135 million worth of projects in the pipeline. So that the pipeline January 2021 today is twice as large as the pipeline was exactly 12 months ago. So there's definite appetite. Unlike residential buildings, over 90% of large commercial buildings are solar optimal. They don't have shade from trees. They have big roof areas. They can be re-roofed and that can be folded into the financing for solar. And that's good for whether the building owner is the actual occupant or whether there's the leaseholder. And of course, this is a picture of the train station parking lot and the Metro North yard in my village. And there's tons of parking lots. In fact, that parking lot RFP has gone out for solar, I believe already lit. This is what rooftop solar looks like when your crew is almost done the job. They're super happy, almost to be done. This is a roof mounted solar project we did on Arcadia Horse Farm in Yorktown on Baptist Church Road. And it's already fully subscribed with community solar subscribers from the area. Open space is, of course, very compatible with solar, as other speakers such as Mayor Picinich has pointed out. The issue there is we love our open space. We love our trees. We love our views. What can be done? I'll come back to that in a moment. So if we take a look at an actual commercial roof for a community solar project, this is a 14,000 square foot facility that was bought by the Village of Croton to house Public Works, but the roof needed repairs. And through an RFP process, the village chose a solar developer named Ecogy Energy to both repair the roof and install community solar, which was done. The village will receive $700,000 in lease payments over 20 years, actually 25 years, and 50 local households are now subscribed, saving 10% on their bill. The village wanted an emphasis on low to moderate income subscribers, and 17% of the subscribers are low to moderate income. And the local contractor was also hired to construct this project, which kept even more dollars in the local economy. And in the interest of self-disclosure, my company, Croton Energy Group, was that local contractor. That's why I get all the good drone shots of this stuff while it's being done. The bottom line is commercial roofs are great for solar farms, community solar projects. 1 acre of roof can, generally speaking, supply about 150 houses with annual electric supply, or roughly 44,000 square feet. So the question is, how many acres of underused commercial roofs are there in Westchester whose owners would like to earn a lease payment? I don't have an answer for that. That's why the rest of the screen is blank, but that's the open question. What about large-scale ground mounts? Again, large-scale ground mounts typically will produce a little bit more than the large flat roofs, and that's because you're tipping the solar panels up 20 to 30 degrees to meet the sun and optimize a little more harvest. And so the question is, how many acres of underused ground is available in Westchester? And I think what the theme that's developing is we're not talking here about clear-cutting old growth mature forests whatsoever. We're looking for abandoned or formerly developed sites that may be long dormant or vacant, like isolated empty office parks, commercial buildings, parking lots, or we're looking for excess capacity land on an otherwise active enterprise. There may be an active farm or nursery or other property that has land where it's not using, as in Oakwood Cemetery, the back 4 acres next to the Metro North line. And then thirdly, as been mentioned before, parking lots are great candidates for solar with the introduction of canopies. And there are more and more canopy technologies becoming available, and the price for building the canopy itself as a structure cost is coming down over time as more companies enter that marketplace and the volume grows as economies of scale. Here's an actual study of a real ground mount in the town of Cortland. This is on Croton Avenue. This was a series of buildings that had been slowly abandoned on a 36-acre parcel. It was zoned residential, or is currently zoned R40, 1 acre residential, which meant that somebody could have built roughly 30 houses on this site. Much has happened across the street, as you can see the housing development on the left. There is a high school, Walter Pannis High School, to the immediate east, and to the immediate north, there's another housing development. So it's a parcel that was otherwise underused. This is the showing all the rows of solar panels facing due south to optimize harvest as they rise up this hill, which has a slow incline to it. The existing conditions were that it was in the New York City watershed, that 6.5 acres of it were in the watershed. It had on-site 1.7 acres of wetland, so the wetland buffer area took 4.6 acres out of the area where solar could be built. About a fifth of the site had a relatively low slope, which is where the solar system is currently, roughly speaking, sited. There were 6 buildings on the site that were being taken away. So we were removing existing buildings, removing impervious surface. The forest cover on the site was 18 acres, roughly 50% of the site was forested. As you could see in that picture before, there was this sort of donut of forest around the previously developed site. And the tree census pointed out there were 2,250 trees on the site and about 12 acres of lawn or meadow coverage. Under Local Law 8, which the town of Cortland adopted in late 2019, the minimum lot size for this kind of large ground-mounted solar was 10 acres, and this site exceeded that by being 36 acres. The minimum setbacks in the town would otherwise have been 50 feet, but under the local law for large ground-mounted solar, there was a 200-foot setback required from front, rear, and side yards. And so this project was able to achieve minimum 209 to up to 321 feet provided for those setbacks. So we passed that muster. The landscape coverage was 50%. And in this particular case, 87% of the site will be a landscape and not hardscape. And the structure height for the accessory structures that would hold the solar couldn't be more than 25 feet tall. In this case, the height of the solar panel at the back edge facing north, the highest is only 7.5 feet tall. Our crews love that because they don't need a step ladder to do any work. They just reach up. No ladders on this job. So this job has 10,000 solar panels that face due south. They're ground-mounted rows, as we've seen in other pictures. And it did require the removal of about 594 trees. 91 of those are being replanted and 1,600 remain relative to the impact on the edge forest that was there. This is what it looks like during construction. It looks a little bit like the Battle of Verdun. But nonetheless, there are lots of best management practices around this construction site. In the background, you can see the completed solar, as we're calling them, tables, where the panels have been mounted. In the foreground, we see a close-up of what this mounting system looked like. In this particular case, the system that was chosen to mount these panels was an earth screw from TerraSmart, which is if you can picture a drywall screw that's 8 feet long and galvanized, that's what these were mounted with. So there was with that minimized excavation, and there's simply a machine that drills these screws in, and then everything is built up on those. In this particular case, we're citing the height of the concrete that's going to be poured for the transformer pads. My business partner, Patrick, is over on the right looking through the survey instrument, while Mark, our site foreman, is on the other hand holding the staff. This is another one of our foremen, Eddie. I recognize him from the back with his mud gear on. In the trench, obviously when you're doing work in the ground, there are regulations to comply with, and in this particular case, the bottom of the trench is filled with sand per code, per requirements, to prevent, to increase drainage and to prevent buckling and create a stable bottom for these conduits that'll be buried. And looking away to the south, we see a tower on the left. That's essentially located on the playing fields, next to the playing fields for Walter Panis High School. So in the case of this particular solar system, there were no view shed issues that this would be somehow in the view of people and blinding people opposite, and that, so it did have to pass all of that muster. The question becomes, how many such large-scale ground mount systems are in the future for Westchester County as of December 31st, 2020? I went to the New York State's data set and pulled up the following information sorted by zip code for Westchester County. This is just page one, there's a second page. When you sort it all out, again, I'll make this available to you, and you go to page 2, what I did was I counted up how many projects were community solar projects and how many were other, to see how many of these large community solar projects are coming down the pike. Projects listed here may or may not yet be announced to the local jurisdictions, the local city, towns, and villages. This just means somebody got through their initial interconnection review with the utility and then immediately raced over to the state to file for the incentive. They may not have registered a building permit application yet with the local or site plan review with the local jurisdiction. If we add it all up for Westchester County, as of this moment, there's 74 projects that are community solar projects waiting to happen, and 18 that are large scale that are going to be probably roof mounted for private building owners. That adds up to 67 million kilowatt hours of expected annual production. And the number of solar systems built in Westchester on homes is 7,000 at the moment. If the average house uses 10 megawatt hours a year, this capacity that's in the pipeline now is enough to equally match that. So we have as much capacity in the pipeline now, not yet built, as we have entirely installed on all residential homes in Westchester County. So that's just giving you a quick snapshot of, if you're on a planning board at one of these jurisdictions or village, town, city council, and you haven't figured out how to develop local laws around what you think you want to have happen, now's a very good time to get very busy with that and take the advice of Scenic Hudson and other municipalities that have done this. And community solar, as I said, is here to stay. People want to monetize roof space that's not otherwise earning them any money. And there are no traffic issues, no view shed issues, no wetland issues or tree impacts when you use the roof. And for ground mounted systems, we do have all these things to consider, as other speakers have mentioned. And we've found that the solar developers that we're working with are very, very amenable to working with pollinators and indigenous plantings, or even I like the clever idea of raising the fence so that small mammals and birds can go underneath the fence and not through it around it. So there's lots of opportunity here, and we're going to see this coming before lots of municipalities throughout the county in the next 12 months. I think that's all I had. This is what it looks like if you put it on a roof of a church, a very large church, I have to say.
Thank you, Leo. And a big thank you to all of the presenters and really your astounding efficiency with your time today to get us through all of this somehow miraculously in the time that we've allotted for everyone to be here today. So with that, as you close your screen there, I'm just gonna go through a few things and then Tom and I will go through the questions that we can get to in the time. Just before we start, I want to reiterate what Anne said at the top of the hour, that this is just the beginning of the conversation. So there's a lot of things that we're not going to get to. We wanted this to open more questions than it really answered. So make sure that you do fill out that poll when you receive it tomorrow. So we have an idea of how to plan for the future. I also just want to make sure that we note, Nina Orville put in the chat, sustainablewestchester.org/solar to find out more about their community solar program and information on enrolling. So I want to make sure everyone had a chance to see that. And then I will kick it off with the first question I have here is for Audrey. And that is, have you started to think how batteries affect solar planning and bringing that into your guides?
I think I put a quick answer to that in the chat. And so this, of course, all depends on the capacity of our staff, along with all the other things that we are working on. But we do recognize that storage in the context of the efforts of the state to increase that, along with renewable energy, and the various proceedings that are going on at the Public Service Commission is really trying to ramp that up, and also utilities are taking into consideration how to get those onto the grid. So we recognize that as sort of another land use issue that would probably be helpful for us to address. But I would point out that NYSERDA's solar guidebook for municipalities does include some information with regard to storage already. So we hear you and we take the recommendation and we are looking at it.
Thank you, Audrey. Tom, if you have one queued up, maybe in the chat there.
Yes, here's one not to a specific person. Given the numerous volunteer fire departments across Westchester, are there any plans for countywide training for home and large-scale firefighting training? I can imagine more and more large battery systems to deal with.
That's a great question. So I'm going to take that question and say get back to you, but that's a great question. That's a really good question. I do not know. Leo might know.
The state did have some training a couple years ago for firefighters relative to solar. That was aimed at residential solar, after which the state promulgated some guidelines. So that may be an issue that could be tackled from the state down.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. All right, next I have a question for Peter, and that is actually coming in from Anne, and she's asking you if you can talk about the New York State legislation to deal with enabling state parks to install solar on their parking lots.
Sure, of course I can. So our own Pete Harcum had established a bill in the Senate last year, and it deals with the alienation law with all parks, and we're having an issue putting solar panels on the parking lots because of this alienation law. And Pete Harcum has presented a bill. It was S 8635, I believe it was, and it flew through the Senate, but because of the crud, as I call it, the COVID issue, and as well as then the subsequent budget. It did not get through the assembly, didn't even get into the assembly yet. So they're going to reintroduce it, and I believe it's going to go through pretty quickly, but this will remove that inhibitor on placing solar panels on parking lots. Nobody's going to be putting any solar ground mounts in any parks anytime soon, but on the parking lots, they just make a tremendous amount of sense. And I've talked to a number of environmentalists and others that agree this is a way to go. So I can talk more about it if you want.
Here's parking lots. How about Midge asked a question for Leo and all. How can we make carport solo more economically viable, especially in NYSEG areas?
Make them solo? What was the question?
Carport solo?
Carport solar.
Oh, carport solar.
Oh, okay.
So the NYSEG territory's challenge is that the electric rates are lower, sometimes 40% lower than they are in Con Edison territory. So and it costs the same dollar to build it in the NYSEG portion of the town of Bedford than it would in the little corner that's Con Edison in the town of Bedford. So the payback periods are simply longer. The good news is over time that the cost of the carports themselves has been dropping, not dramatically, but steadily. That's sort of where the efficiency might come in to make them more viable in the NYSEG territory.
Yeah, the prices on those were very, I hate to use the word again, inhibiting, but that price, the cost of those has come down drastically. And there's also the added benefit of having EV charging stations applied there. So they have a multi-benefit. They're also good if you have connection issues. Leo can probably talk to that more. Yeah. And some of the, so we talked about the community solar partnership. Some of the municipalities have put forth proposed their parking lots, commuter lots or whatever as a part of that. So it's happening. Again, like I talked about the aggregation and the fact that we'll be able to get some economy of scale to get better rates will alleviate that price economic issue that Leo just mentioned.
All right, we are going to get to as many questions as we can for those of you who want and are able to stay a little bit longer. But Anne, I don't know if you had any closing notes that you wanted to say before anyone who had a hard limit at 2 p.m. needed to hear.
Yeah, just what you had said, Nadia, that we'll be sending out an email after this with the recording link and also a questionnaire to find out what you'd like to follow ups on. And we'll continue doing this in this format for a quick informational in the middle of your day. So thanks very much to everyone for attending.
All right, and for those of you who are able to stick around, we'll just answer a few more questions here. So I have another one for Audrey. Do you have plans to, or could you expand your future document to include zoning for solar? And again, maybe this is something you answered in the chat, but I haven't had a chance to see yet.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we actually have a new guide or a handbook with recommendations and best practices for zoning. It's kind of agnostic to the NYSERDA model solar law that the mayor mentioned that I think probably many municipalities have used. But really, again, what it does is it tries to provide some information with regard to how to think to really put into effect a policy, a local policy that is pro-solar, and developing the kind of language that provides for well-cited projects, but at the same time, getting them allowed broadly within a municipality and providing flexibility for their installation. So stay tuned. Hopefully that's going to be coming out within the next week or so. It's in final production and it will be available as an electronic document, and we'll most likely address it at the webinar next Thursday.
Great, thank you. One other question. Landowners get property tax benefits reductions if their land is farmed. Is there a similar incentive if they put up solar arrays instead?
I can address that. I think I tried to answer that question, but I think I sent the answer to only one person by accident in the chat. So I believe it is section 487 of the real property tax law that does provide an exemption from property taxes for solar in terms of the relationship between farmed land that receives a tax exemption, a conversion of farmed land to solar. I think at this point, the law still provides that results in sort of an impact on the ability to get the farming exemption, and there's some sort of clawback in place as opposed to other types of renewable energy or even fossil fuel extraction. And once again, I would point you to NYSERDA's solar handbook for municipalities. There is a whole information section with regard to that part 487 of the real property tax law. Unfortunately, in areas where, local folks or leaders or municipalities are trying to stop solar, they do have and can take the option to opt out of that property tax exemption. And the effect of that is to cause developers to have to pay sort of taxes on a year-to-year basis on a regular, instead of being able to negotiate a pilot or payment in lieu of taxes and then know what their cost is going to be from year to year. So it's kind of a highly technical and difficult area, but the bottom line is there is currently in law an exemption for solar.
All right, our next question is for Peter. What about a county initiative to work with all the Central Avenue malls to install on all the parking lots the length of the avenue?
I'm glad you asked the question. So phase 3, but it's a little bit more difficult. We're working with New York Power Authority, NYPA. So that's why our phase 2 is really focused on the municipalities and schools, because those are NYPA customers. And they're basically acting as our general contractor and pulling this all together. We just don't have the ways or means here at the county to do that. But I agree. Across all of our commercial spaces, there's an opportunity to, aggregate those to, make it quicker, easier, the whole procurement process and then the permitting process. There's a lot of things that you can, if you join together, you can, make it much quicker and easier and cheaper.
All right, I'm going to tag another one onto that really quickly for you, and that is somebody asking what the plan for solar is or isn't at Croton Point Park.
So we're not going to do anything on the landfill. There's, I'm a birder, so there's a lot of birding issues with our raptors there. There's a wonderful raptor population on the landfill in Croton Point Park. But what we're looking at is the carports, the parking lot there, and a carport installation, not for the whole property, but just, a portion of the parking lot. That's it. Does that answer the question? Okay.
I think it does.
Here's one other one, actually multi-part, but around the same thing. How do solar panels impact the soil under the panels? Erosion and sediment? Is it possible to ever convert back to farmland if necessary? What's the amount of EMF that's released under and around the solar panels?
Leo?
I'll take that. Yeah, the amount of EMF is quite, electromagnetic force is quite low because we're operating at low voltage. The soil underneath the solar panels is typically not adversely affected. The solar panels sit a couple of feet off the ground, so they're essentially creating light to moderate shade conditions underneath them. In cases where the soil itself is relatively barren, solar developers may put gravel underneath solar panels. The muddy field I showed you before of the solar system under construction will be seeded with indigenous grasses and pollinator flower mix. There will be occasional driving up and down the lanes to either mow or to provide maintenance. The solar panels are typically 11 to 12 or 13 feet apart in terms of the rows, so you can drive a small vehicle in between if you need to. But other than the fact that we're not creating any new impervious surfaces, the solar panel is high up enough off the ground that it's simply, the water or precipitation simply runs down the panel and drifts onto the soil from there. That's effectively what's happening. The amount of water that's dripping in any one particular spot is only water from, let's see, 11 feet of ridge. If you a rafter run, in other words, 2 solar panels mounted together will be 11 feet start to finish. So we're not talking a huge volume of water in any one particular point hitting the ground. I think that answers.
All right. There are some questions about long-term planning for landscaping in areas that have been built out with solar panels. So I'll ask the mayor, is there a long-term plan for maintaining those pollinator species and making sure that that works in perpetuity as long as the panels are there?
Yeah, I can't answer that question. I'd love to, but I have to be honest. So we leased our property to BQ Energy, and so they are responsible for the maintenance of that. So that is basically their responsibility. Yeah.
I just want to note that we are seeing all the comments in here discussing, trees and habitats and a lot of the important things that we're just not able to necessarily answer today, but I want everyone to know that we are noting those. So everyone's, I think, at just about their limit here, and we don't want to drag on too long. A few people are heading out now. So I want to thank everybody, thank all the presenters. And Peter, if you have something that you want to add. I just
wanted to, there was a lot of tree chatter, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that Westchester County is not cutting down any trees for any of our solar projects, and we don't plan to. And we follow all the strictest SECRA and other environmental issues and controls on that. As everybody's required to, as Mount Kisco, as anybody is required to. So I just want to clear Westchester County on that, because I'm a tree lover. I'm a tree hugger. I had hair down to here about 2 weeks ago, so I'm a hippie by nature, and so thank you for this really opportunity to speak to everybody. It was great to see the mayor here. What a wonderful person. You guys are very fortunate, Mount Kisco, and my good friend Leo, and my new good friend Audrey. Thank you guys.
Thank you all. Maybe we can squeak out one last question here. Maybe Tom, if you grabbed out a good one, and then we'll let everyone out of here for the rest of their day. Not to put you on the spot now, Tom.
Yeah, I think that there's one that kind of wraps up the back end of things. What is the expected life expectancy of the solar field, and how do you plan for decommissioning?
Yeah, I can tackle that. So the life expectancy is based on 20 to 25 years, and most of the leases are staged to that time frame. And the leases almost always come because the landowner, whether it's the village of Mount Kisco or whether it's a private landowner, will require a decommissioning plan that will be in place and require the removal of the entire solar system at the end of that lease term or the end of the extension of the lease term, and restoration of the land back to what it was before. So those are typically always important clauses to have in these land lease agreements. And the systems haven't been around long enough that we haven't decommissioned any yet. So, but the way you take any building apart, you can also take this apart. Because of the materials that are used for it, the metals and the glass are highly recyclable, so they have recycle content value. And there are starting to be a small cottage industry of a couple companies that now specialize in showing up to take away the solar system on your roof at the end of its life.
And just as a point of information, as part of our code, a decommissioning plan is required. So when you get your special use permit and site plan approval with the planning board, you will have had to have submitted a decommissioning plan, which will hold you to when you get to that point in 25 years.
Wow.
And typically, I think that the ground underneath is in much better shape than it would be if this were a coal-fired power plant or any other kind of making electricity.
Was that a question, Tom, or just a statement?
It was a statement.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
No, you're correct. I mean, think about all the other ways that this property or land could be destroyed or abused or misused, you know, and but yeah.
Well, and this relates to the environmental justice. We're going to definitely do a program on community solar and environmental justice because, you know, it's the low economic communities that have put up with the dirty infrastructure items like power plants, coal plants, and, you know, natural gas stations and everything. And that is what solar is also going to benefit, is we're going to not be having all that air pollution from these old fossil fuel plants. So. Yeah, we'll look forward to that in a program on that, and definitely some of these environmental issues we'll cover, and economics. Midge brought up a good question about the economics. We really want to get deeper into the economics of all this to make it, to optimize the economics for everybody that's taking it on. Great. All right, any comments from the presenters? Further comment before you go? We're so grateful to you. It was a wonderful, wonderful bunch of information. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. And we may be calling some of you presenters back again, depending on what subjects come in, okay?
Thank you. I learned a lot.
Take the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all. Take care and be well.
Yes. Be safe. Have a good afternoon.
You too. You too. We'll be there on the 21st.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward to that.
Right.
Nadia and Tom and Carol, you want to stay on for a minute? Because maybe?
Sure.